Last Tuesday was the day I have been waiting for when it comes to the Brave Arsenal. We finally got our hands on the Blast Furnace again. This thing was the king of pulse rifles back in Forsaken and for a long time after that. I myself spent an unreasonable amount of time, several hundred frames of this, back when the armory forges were still available, trying to farm a perfect roll of what I wanted back then, Feeding Frenzy and Rampage. And I had a lot of great rolls with Kill Clip, I had some interesting rolls with Rampage, but I wanted Feeding Frenzy and Rampage. And let me tell you, the day I finally got it was one of the proudest days of Destiny I've ever had. And then, just a week or two later, Bungie announced sunsetting and dashed all of my hopes and dreams in one fell swoop. While we're not going to dwell on that today, I do want to talk to you guys mostly about the three biggest roles for Blast Furnace that I would recommend for PvE. I do also have one with a good PvP role, and I'll go over some options for that, but I have different preferences when it comes to pulse rifles in PvP, as I have expressed in previous videos, so I leave that to you to find your perfect role in PvP, but I really want to talk about the PvE roles that I will be using of Blast Furnace, but also where pulse rifles are at in PvE and why Blast Furnace, despite being arguably, once again, the king of pulse rifles, why it doesn't really matter as much nowadays. Now, before we get into the individual roles I'm going to be talking about today, I am going to give a brief rundown of some of the more desirable perks, in my opinion, on the Blast Furnace. This is not really going to touch on PvP. I'm not really looking at this gun for PvP. I have other preferences there. The big things you're going to notice right off the rip are the range and stability. Both very high perks, both very important to the feel of the gun. Aggressive frame pulse rifles are hard hitting. They're 4-round burst. The range is important because it lets them get those deeper range kills than a lot of the other archetypes, including the high impact. Also, having that stability is so crucial because hitting all 4 rounds of that burst is so important to getting the optimal damage out of this weapon. The one perk I'll tell you not to focus too much on is going to be handling. There are ways to address handling and increase that, but starting from a base of 24, you're really going to want to get that to a 50 to make this gun feel noticeably better in terms of handling. A bump of 10, for example, from something like Arrowhead Break, you're going to feel the recoil direction more than you feel that handling. And so I would prioritize either recoil direction or adding stability to the weapon, because again, the 4-round burst doesn't matter unless you're hitting all 4 rounds of that burst. Having that high stability also helps a lot when it comes to hip firing the weapon, which, as far as pulse rifles go, Blast Furnace always felt like one of the best to me, and so I immediately gravitated towards stability. I wanted stability masterwork. I target perks like small bore, polygonal, chambered compensator. Those are going to be the 3 perks that I prioritize immediately. Corkscrew rifling is a close second. In the next tier of perks, I would put that along with Arrowhead Break. Kind of sits between those two in terms of upgrading the recoil direction. The handling investment, not a huge deal. Doesn't really do anything for me at this point. What I would avoid is barrels like full bore or necessarily even hammer forged. Hammer forged isn't going to hurt you, it's just going to give you more range, but you don't really need to be hitting 40 plus meters with your pulse rifle. At that point, you're probably better off swapping to a scout, and you're kind of using the wrong tool for the situation. full bore is going to hurt the stat that I feel is most important on this gun. It's going to take away stability, which is not what you want to be doing on this gun. You want to make it as stable as possible to make hitting all 4 rounds of that burst as easy as possible. Now, it's not difficult. I'm not going to oversell you on the idea of, oh, if it's not stable enough, you're just not going to hit anything. But the extra ease of use that comes from that stability is what makes something like the base recoil direction of 65 feel a lot more usable, because that spread is going to be a lot tighter because of that stability. And also important to note that base recoil direction is fine. If you don't make any changes to it, I feel it is completely usable in PvE. If you are targeting a PvP role, you're going to want to figure out which recoil direction is going to be good for you. There's a lot of resources out there. I know Cool Guy made a video that goes over all of the different recoil directions, so definitely check that out. But for PvE, the base recoil direction is going to do fine, and then anything you can do for that is entirely preference. If you're not doing a 65, I would probably recommend a 95 with arrowhead brake. I know that's contradictory because I said you don't want to prioritize the handling, but the recoil direction helps. As far as mags go, the only one I don't really recommend is going to be accurized. Again, range is not this pulse rifle's problem. Added stability or added depth to the magazine is going to be huge. When you pair it with my kind of number 1 perk in the 3rd column, kinetic tremors, having a deep enough mag means you're going to be proccing kinetic tremors twice on a single magazine, which if you're running, say, a backup mag mod and something like alloy magazine, you're going to be burning through that entire magazine, proccing kinetic tremors twice on a powerful enemy, and then benefiting from that enhanced reload duration multiplier of alloy magazine when your mag is empty. Flared magwell is another great choice, or any magazine that increases the magazine size. My personal favorite is Tactical Mag because it does add 5 stability. It's free stats for an extra burst in the pulse rifle. Steady rounds is great if you want to prioritize your stats. Again, you're not going to miss the 5 range, but you will feel the 15 stability. As far as 3rd column goes, again, kinetic tremors is the de facto pick for me in the 3rd column. Stuff like perpetual motion, keep away, shoot to loot, they're going to be great perks in high-end content, and if you want to build this weapon around that, that's great, and don't hesitate to do that. If you want the added usability, if you want the added utility, that's totally fine. But having kinetic tremors in the 3rd column and being able to pair that with the right perks in the 4th column to make the most out of it is what really defines this weapon for me. And speaking of the 4th column, the guns I'm going to show you today, the 3 roles of Blast Furnace, are going to focus on Firefly, One for All, and Frenzy, as I feel those are the 3 best in-slot perks for this weapon. Rampage, you know what Rampage is. The downside of Rampage, it's not going to help the kinetic tremor damage. Something like Kill Clip, and I believe Desperate Measures, does enhance that. So those are options if you prefer those perks. But as we're going to get into with some of the utility talk, as we get into the specific roles, hopefully you're going to see why I think Firefly, One for All, and Frenzy are going to be your top picks. If you are looking for a PvP role, just to get it out there, having Zen Moment and Headseeker in the 3rd column, as well as Keep Away, great picks. In the 4th column, you're probably looking at either Rapid Hit for enhanced usability or Kill Clip. One thing to note is if you are playing a really long-range map, something like an Eternity, and you want to get really clever, Kinetic Tremors is kind of a fun way to give your weapon that unlimited range feel of something like Explosive Payload, because as long as you're hitting 3 bursts with the weapon, you're going to proc Kinetic Tremors. Kinetic Tremors doesn't matter how far it is away between you and the enemy, it's going to do whatever damage it does to that enemy. So that can be an interesting combination if used properly. Not something I'm going to tell everybody to go out and look for, but an option that's there. Now, the first Blast Furnace I want to specifically discuss today is going to be with Firefly. So, Firefly doesn't seem like a perk that technically synergizes with Kinetic Tremors. Firefly is strong against weaker enemies that you can get precision hits on. They cause explosions, bada bing, bada boom, everything dies. Kinetic Tremors isn't going to proc on those enemies. So, on paper, there's not a lot of synergy there. But, if you look beyond that and you think a little outside of the box, Firefly actually makes Blast Furnace the most consistent out of all of the perk combinations. Firefly allows the gun to be an effective ad clear weapon. It allows it to clear out swaths of red bars very quickly, very effectively, and very safely, while also addressing one of the weapon's biggest weaknesses in terms of its reload speed. Now, when Firefly does get a precision kill, it does the explosion from the target, that solar explosion, that does deal damage, but it also grants 50 reload speed for 6 seconds. So, on the roll like what I'm using right now in the footage that you're seeing here, that's going to give me a total reload speed of 96, which turns out to be pretty quick. Gets you back in the action faster and gets you clearing ads more effectively. This particular run is a Legend Onslaught. This is actually the beginning, if you couldn't tell, we spawned in. This is how effectively you're going to see these ads be cleared, and this is a decent representation of some later game difficulty. Now, the downside to Firefly is that it is not a damage perk. And so enemies that are not going to be proccing Kinetic Tremors are not really benefiting from the perk combination. So in a mix of enemy difficulty like Onslaught, you're going to get the most out of the gun. But if you're just in low difficulty content, you're rarely going to see Kinetic Tremors procced. If you're playing in the highest level difficulty of content, such as Wave 40 or 50 Onslaught, you're going to see the effectiveness of Firefly drop considerably. Now, I still believe it's a very fun gun. I think it's a great role to have. It's not a gun you're going to bring on your day one raid. It's not a gun you're going to bring for your master encounters in the hope of clearing ads effectively. It is a gun that is fun to use, and you're going to use it when you want to have fun. How much that matters to you is entirely up to you. I think it's a very valuable role. I think it synergizes better than people give it credit for. I have a role on it that I really do like with the corkscrew, appended mag, Kinetic Tremors, Firefly. Better masterwork than reload speed would probably be preferred, especially since I have Firefly. But if you're just like, hey, I want to put on a gun, I want to shoot some guys, make their heads pop, great. This version of Blast Furnace is perfect for you. Now, the role that I think most people are going to be looking for on Blast Furnace is going to be one involving the perk One for All. And there's a few different reasons for that. The first being, One for All is one of the strongest damage perks in the game. Hitting 3 separate enemies grants 35% increased damage for 10 seconds. That's huge. That's bait and switch levels of damage just for hitting 3 different targets. And it makes your primary weapon feel like it's suddenly a major shredding machine, not just a red bar shredding machine. Now, why would everybody be looking for One for All to pair with something like Kinetic Tremors? Well, because Kinetic Tremors. Kinetic Tremors are going to radiate from stronger enemies, the type that Blast Furnace is not going to be able to effectively kill at its base level. So, by adding Kinetic Tremors to that and hitting that orange or yellow bar downrange, you're going to proc Kinetic Tremors, which in turn, in an activity like, say, Onslaught, is going to hit all of the enemies around it. Odds are proccing One for All, allowing you to target one enemy but effectively hit 3 for free just by using the gun for its intended purposes. Then the damage from One for All is also going to apply to Kinetic Tremors. So the next time you proc Kinetic Tremors on another orange or yellow bar downrange, they're now going to be dealing 35% more damage from those tremors to everything around them, including themselves. So you're hitting that target for 35% more damage, dealing that bonus damage to every target around it on top of kinetic tremors. It's a crazy high-end ad clear option. This is your end game pulse rifle. This is the version you bring into your day one raid. This is the version you bring for master clears or for solo lost sectors, things like that, because the enemies are going to be strong enough to benefit from the hits of kinetic tremors, going to be strong enough to benefit from one for all. You're not going to take this gun and go to Altars of Sorrow on the moon and say, haha, I'm going to have fun, watch me shred these red bars. No, you're going to bring your Firefly version of the gun for that. This one is for your endgame activities. This is for the player who loves Blast Furnace or loves Pulse Rifles and wants a really good one to bring to GMs. This is your Blast Furnace. Now, my personal favorite Blast Furnace is actually going to be the one with Frenzy. And there's a lot of reason for that. It doesn't hurt that I got lucky enough to get this one as a shiny, but Frenzy was always the most appealing perk to me from the start because of how it addresses the weaknesses of Blast Furnace for just using Blast Furnace. The two biggest weaknesses on this gun are handling and reload speed, and Frenzy, on top of granting a 15% damage buff just for being in combat. That means taking or dealing damage anytime within 12 seconds, proccing that perk, staying active for 7.2 seconds, and then either taking or dealing damage within the last 5 seconds. That's what's considered being in combat. For that, you're getting a 15% buff to damage, which again applies to kinetic tremors. Not as strong as One for All. Not going to take that away. One for All is by far the strongest option if you want to get the most damage out of your Blast Furnace and especially out of kinetic tremors. But having 15% up just for shooting the gun and hitting an enemy, which you're going to be doing, you're going to be taking damage in Onslaught, you're going to be consistently dealing damage in Onslaught, and unless you're in a wave, right at the tail of a wave where you're about to go into a build phase or enter the ship or something, Frenzy is going to stay active between those waves and allow you the opportunity to keep it procced. What it's going to do for you is it's going to increase your handling to 100, making Blast Furnace the snappiest, most responsive it can feel, which on a gun that otherwise does not feel that way is incredible. And by far, when Frenzy is active, this is by far my favorite Blast Furnace because it just feels so good to use. It has no weaknesses in terms of stats. And then adding to that the 100 reload speed, that means you're getting back in the action more often. You're getting additional rounds in that magazine faster, dealing that damage more effectively. This is the Blast Furnace that I plan to use for almost every circumstance. Again, if I want to go and be the bane of red bars, I can use Firefly. And if I'm going into a GM or if I'm bringing a Blast Furnace for day one, if Frenzy isn't cutting it, I have the One for All role. But the Frenzy role is the jack of all trades. It addresses all of the stat weaknesses of Blast Furnace without sacrificing anything in the process to do it, while giving it a 15% damage buff to both the weapon damage and kinetic tremor damage. It is incredible, and I specifically saved this one for last to show its effectiveness later in Onslaught. This is going towards the boss on wave 30, so you can see how it holds up against stronger enemies when I'm much more underpowered. What you're also going to see, though, is despite how strong this pulse rifle is and how strong it can be with all these perks, in PvE there is still an issue overall with the strength of pulse rifles. I made a video last season in Season of the Witch talking about the buff that was coming to pulse rifles this season in PvE, the 12.5% damage buff. Now, that definitely helped, but we are clearly not across the finish line when it comes to pulse rifle usability in PvE. This gun is great, it is powerful, and it should be much more effective than it is in an activity like Onslaught. I should be able to help pick these enemies off at a longer range, but as the waves go on, and my friends are using Sunshot or Graviton Lance, or even something like Zowli's Bane with the benefit of the artifact perks this season, you're seeing them get more kills. You're seeing more solar explosions. You're seeing more continual void explosions. You're seeing things like incandescent happening faster, ignitions happening faster than Blast Furnace with these damage perks effectively killing these enemies, including red bars. You know, it shouldn't be a situation where I have to put 2 4-round bursts into an enemy's head to properly take them down with a pulse rifle. Now, should it be 1 burst? Maybe not. But we're talking about being able to be usable in endgame activities. We're talking right now about being able to take this into a wave 40 to 50 version of Onslaught, and while not outclassing those guns, I don't expect it to beat exotics. I don't expect it to beat a hand cannon that is directly impacted from this season's artifact perks. But I expect it to be competitive. I expect to not feel like I am a detriment to my team by running this gun. I have been running a lot of Necrochasm in Onslaught, and it has been extremely effective. Its explosions still clear adds deep into the run, closing in on wave 50. It does good damage to red bars all the way through. It's great in a pinch against orange bars, and if I'm all out of ammo, I can swap it to something like Outbreak. I can swap it to a different gun that's going to do better. I can do those things with Blast Furnace. I can swap it to swap Blast Furnace to another gun that's going to be more effective in that situation. But Blast Furnace never feels like the right choice for the situation to begin with. Of course, if I go to the moon and altars, it's going to feel great because those enemies are made out of paper mache. They'll die to anything. A strong breeze will come through and the Thrall are going to orbit. When I'm in Onslaught, I don't want to feel like I lost at the loadout screen because I've gone in with other weapons like a multi-mock, and while it is not as effective, it's still into the later waves can kill 2-3 enemies in a magazine. Blast Furnace can as well, but my multi-mock is giving me the benefit of lightweight, which helps with survivability in those later waves, gets me out of trouble faster. It has attrition orbs, which is generating orbs for more supers. There's a lot more utility. Blast Furnace has a lot of utility, but it is weapon specific. It is building utility into making the weapon more effective, not so much benefiting the fire team, which is something like Onslaught or GMs or a day 1 raid really need. And not everybody's going to care about that, which is why I highlight all of these perks. Somebody's going to get Firefly and Kinetic Tremors and say, yippee, oh boy, let me put this on the fridge. Mom, get the camera. That's going to be great for that person. Somebody's going to get that 1-for-all Kinetic Tremors. They're going to be like, I'm done. I don't need to run any more Onslaught. I'm done. I'm retiring until the final shape. I'm going to bring that thing. I'm going to punch the witness in the face with it. I don't know. But for me, as somebody who enjoys pulse rifles a lot, it just feels like they're still not hitting the way they need to. A lot of enemies should, in normal content, just die to the first burst. It's a 4-round burst. They should just drop. In something like Onslaught, the first 30 waves, I should probably still be killing enemies in less than a full 2 bursts. Pulse rifles need help in PvE. And it's not just Blast Furnace, it's all of them. They need help in PvE to feel more effective. I don't know what that buff is. Is it 15% damage to red bars? Is it 20% damage to red bars? Is it another 15% damage to everything? Hand cannons, SMGs, And to some extent, auto rifles still feel like the best picks to have for PvE, regardless of difficulty, and even more so the higher difficulty you get. And the hand cannon people have suffered, so I'm not trying to take away from the buffs those got. Those are well deserved. I know a lot of people who were suffering through hand cannons being very weak in PvE. And, you know, I am happy for them that they are strong now. And I'm happy that guns like Sunshot and Graviton and Necrochasm feel really good in endgame ad clearing activities. That's awesome. Legendary pulse rifles need help, though. And pulse rifles as a whole still kind of need that help. Like, Outbreak still doesn't feel as strong as it should in those later waves. Having used it, you know, Necrochasm again, the thing is I'm going to clear way more ads with Necrochasm in wave 40 than I am with Outbreak. And, you know, Outbreak's going to be craftable very soon, and I'm looking forward to that, and I'll do more testing, and we'll see how some of these perks maybe change that. But as a whole, pulse rifles need help, specifically legendary. But if they can get some help across the board, I think that would be great. Another 10% isn't going to move the needle. It's just going to say, well, it's better, but still not quite there. It needs to be more drastic. I would think at least 15% to at least red bars. I don't need them to be the most effective weapon against orange bars or yellow bars or anything like that, but at least against red bars. Let them more reliably get that one burst kill. Let them more reliably get that 2-burst kill on an orange bar, or a 3-burst at worst. Give them an opportunity to be as effective in the sandbox as their counterparts, because they sit in that middle ground where auto rifles just sometimes kill a little faster, scout rifles play considerably safer. Pulse rifles feel like a great fit for something like Onslaught because they're usable enough at closer ranges, but very strong at the longer ranges, the longer sightlines that something like Onslaught has. Lets them shine, and they don't get to because they're just not good enough. That's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys are enjoying farming for Blast Furnace. If you're looking for a great role, let me know what you're looking for. If you have it, let me know. Show me. I'd love to see what people are using. And otherwise, thank you guys so much for the turnout in the last video. I got to like 10,000 views. That was incredible for me. I hadn't had a Destiny video get anywhere close to that. So you guys are incredible. Thank you so much for the support. And, for the critiques, I hope I did a little better in this video for you. It's a little longer than I had hoped, but I did a lot of re-recording to try and condense. And it's a process that's always going to hopefully get better. But thank you guys. Please continue to provide the feedback and keep doing what you're doing. I'll probably have 1 or 2 more videos out before the final shape. I want to see what they're doing with exotics and things like that. I don't want this to go on any longer. I'm sorry. I'll talk all day if you let me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye-bye.